Christmas Eve. Golden light bathed the most elegant restaurant in the downtown district. Every table was full, except for a poor man holding his small daughter. The moment he sat down, the manager stepped forward with a cold shake of his head. "I'm sorry. This table isn't for you." Contemptuous glances swept over his worn coat and scuffed shoes. He was preparing to stand when a woman's voice whispered from beside him. "Don't go. If you don't have plans tonight, would you like to date me?" The restaurant hummed with the quiet buzz of satisfied diners. Silverware clinked against fine china. Crystal glasses caught the light from chandeliers that hung like frozen constellations. Outside the windows, snow drifted down through the darkness, each flake illuminated briefly before disappearing into the night. Ethan Walker had never felt so out of place in his life. At 36, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had learned to make peace with hardship. His hands, calloused from night shifts, repairing electrical systems and early mornings delivering packages during the Christmas rush, rested awkwardly at his sides. He had saved for 3 months to afford this reservation. 3 months of skipping lunch, of walking instead of taking the bus, of telling his daughter that the cartoon character on the discount cereal was just as good as the name brand. Beside him, Lily pressed closer to his leg. 7 years old, with dark eyes that saw too much and understood more than she should. She wore her only good dress, the one they had bought at a thrift store last spring. She had grown since then. The hem didn't quite reach her knees anymore, but she had insisted on wearing it tonight. "It's Christmas, Daddy," she had said. "We should look nice." The woman who had spoken sat alone at a table near the window. Grace Whitmore, though Ethan didn't know her name yet. She appeared to be in her early 30s, perhaps 32 or 34, beautiful in that effortless way that came not from makeup but from something deeper, something that lived behind the eyes. Her dress was simple but elegant, the kind of garment that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Dark hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, but it was her eyes that caught the light, held it, reflected something that looked almost like loneliness. She had been watching the entrance when they arrived, had seen the hostess greet them with barely concealed distaste, had noticed the manager glide over with that professional smile that never quite reached the eyes. The restaurant itself felt like another world. Garlands of evergreen draped across the walls, woven through with tiny white lights. A Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with gold and silver ornaments that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. The other diners wore clothes that fit properly, jewelry that caught the light, watches that told time but really announced status. This was a place where money wasn't discussed because everyone had enough of it. Ethan had called 6 weeks ago to make the reservation. The woman on the phone had been polite, professional. She had taken his name, his credit card information for the deposit. She hadn't asked what he did for a living, hadn't asked about his bank balance. He had thought that would be enough. Lily tugged on his hand now, her small fingers tight around his. She was trying not to cry. He could see it in the way she pressed her lips together, in the way she kept her eyes fixed on the floor. She had been so excited. For weeks, she had talked about nothing else. A real Christmas dinner, she had said, with candles and music and everything pretty. He knelt down, bringing himself to her level. "Hey," he said softly. "It's okay. We'll find somewhere else." "But you saved up," Lily whispered. "You saved for so long." The manager had already turned away, moving toward a couple who had just entered. They wore the right clothes, carried the right air of belonging. Within seconds, they were being escorted to a table near the center of the room. Ethan felt the weight of every glance that slid across them, felt the judgment in the silence that followed wherever they moved. He had known, on some level, that this might happen. But knowing and experiencing were different things. Shame burned in his chest, not for himself, but for his daughter. For the fact that she had to learn this lesson so young, that the world sorted people by their clothes, their addresses, their ability to afford a meal that cost what he made in a week. He straightened, preparing to guide Lily back toward the door. The Christmas lights outside suddenly seemed cruel rather than cheerful. Just another reminder of everything they couldn't have, everywhere they didn't belong. That was when the woman spoke. Her voice cut through the ambient noise, clear and calm. "Excuse me." She was looking directly at the manager. "These are my guests. There seems to be some confusion." The manager turned, his expression shifting from dismissive to attentive in the space of a heartbeat. "Well, now you are." Grace stood, smoothing her dress. She walked over to where Ethan and Lily stood, frozen near the entrance. Up close, her eyes were a clear, startling gray. She looked at Lily first, offering a gentle smile. Then she turned to Ethan. "I hope you don't think this is too forward, but I noticed you have a reservation and I'm sitting alone, and it's Christmas Eve. Would you consider joining me?" The restaurant had gone quiet. Not the silence of ordinary conversation pausing, but the heavy silence of shock. Every eye was on them now. Ethan could feel the weight of attention, the unspoken questions hanging in the air. "I don't understand," he said quietly. Grace's smile didn't waver. "I'm asking if you'd like to have dinner with me." Lily looked up at her father, then at Grace, then back again. Her small hand tightened around Ethan's fingers. "Daddy," she whispered. "She's nice." The manager cleared his throat. "Of course. If Madam wishes, we can arrange additional seating at her table." "That won't be necessary," Grace said smoothly. "My table accommodates 4. We'll be quite comfortable." She turned back to Ethan, her expression open, waiting. There was no pity in her eyes, no condescension, just a simple invitation extended from one person to another. Ethan stood there, caught between pride and practicality, between the instinct to refuse and the knowledge that his daughter deserved this moment. Finally, he nodded. The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. Grace led them back to her table. The staff materialized with fresh place settings, moving with the swift efficiency of people who understood that their tips depended on reading the room correctly. Menus appeared. Water glasses were filled. The piano player transitioned into a soft arrangement of a Christmas carol. Lily slid into her chair carefully, her eyes wide. She had never been in a place like this. Never seen napkins folded into shapes, never held a menu with no prices listed. She looked at everything with the careful attention of someone trying to memorize a dream before it faded. Grace sat across from them, her posture relaxed. "I'm Grace," she said. "And you are?" "Ethan Walker. This is my daughter, Lily." "Hello, Lily." Grace spoke directly to the girl, not over her head the way adults often did with children. "That's a beautiful dress." Lily touched the fabric self-consciously. "Thank you. It's my favorite. I can see why. Purple is a very distinguished color." The menu lay open in front of Ethan, each item described in language that felt designed to obscure rather than clarify. Herb-crusted this, reduction glazed that. He had looked up the prices online when he made the reservation, had calculated exactly what he could afford. The weight of that calculation pressed down on him now. "I recommend the salmon," Grace said casually, "though the roast is excellent as well. And for Lily, they make the most wonderful pasta with butter and parmesan. Very simple, but perfect." A waiter approached. Grace ordered for herself without consulting the menu, then looked expectantly at Ethan. He ordered carefully, selecting items he had memorized from his research. When Lily hesitated, Grace leaned forward slightly. "The pasta I mentioned? It's not on the children's menu, but they'll make it if you ask." "Would you like that?" Lily nodded, her voice small. "Yes, please." The waiter departed. Silence settled over the table, but it was a different kind of silence now, not the hostile quiet of the restaurant's earlier judgment, but the awkward pause of strangers trying to find common ground. Grace folded her hands on the table. I hope this isn't too strange. I don't usually invite strangers to dinner. Then why did you? Ethan asked. The question came out more direct than he intended. Because, Grace said simply, no one should be turned away on Christmas Eve, especially not when they've done nothing wrong. The honesty of it caught him off guard. He had expected deflection, or worse, pity disguised as generosity. But there was neither in her voice. Just a statement of fact, delivered without performance. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I know. But I wanted to. She turned her attention to Lily, who was still taking in every detail of the room. Do you like Christmas, Lily? Yes, Lily said. We have a tree at home. It's small, but Daddy put lights on it. That sounds lovely. The best trees aren't always the biggest ones. Lily smiled for the first time since they had entered the restaurant. It transformed her face, lit her up from within. Daddy says that too. Their meals arrived, each plate arranged like a work of art. Ethan watched his daughter's eyes widen at the sight of her pasta, served in a pristine white bowl with a sprig of fresh basil on top. She picked up her fork with careful reverence. Grace ate slowly, asking questions between bites. Where did Lily go to school? What was her favorite subject? Did she have friends? Simple questions, but asked with genuine interest. Gradually, Lily began to relax, to open up. She talked about her teacher, about the book she was reading, about how she wanted to learn to play piano someday. What about you? Grace turned to Ethan. What do you do? I work nights, electrical repair, and I pick up delivery shifts during the holidays. That sounds demanding. It pays the bills. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Most of the time. Grace nodded. She didn't fill the silence with platitudes or awkward reassurances. Instead, she asked, Have you always done that kind of work? Ethan hesitated. The truth felt too heavy for a Christmas dinner with a stranger. But something in Grace's steady gaze invited honesty. No, he said finally. I used to be an engineer. Worked for a tech company. Good salary, benefits, the whole package. What changed? He looked down at his plate. My wife got sick. Cancer. She needed someone with her during the treatments, someone to take care of Lily. The company was understanding at first. But when months turned into a year, understanding turned into meetings about productivity. I was given a choice, less time with my family or no job. He took a breath. I chose my family. Grace was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. And your wife? She passed away 2 years ago. I'm sorry. Thank you. The words were automatic, worn smooth by repetition. But he meant them. Lily had grown quiet, her fork tracing patterns in her pasta. She had heard this story before, but it never got easier. Ethan reached over, squeezed her shoulder gently. She looked up at him and tried to smile. Grace cleared her throat lightly, drawing attention back to herself. Lily, have you ever tried crème brûlée? It's a dessert. They make an excellent one here. Lily shook her head. Then you absolutely must. It has a sugar shell on top that cracks when you tap it with a spoon. Very satisfying. The conversation shifted, moving to safer ground. Grace talked about places she had traveled, books she had read, movies she had seen. She had a gift for storytelling, for making even ordinary events sound interesting. Lily laughed at her description of getting lost in Venice, of ending up in a tiny cafe where no one spoke English and she had to order by pointing at other people's plates. Ethan found himself relaxing despite himself. There was something about Grace that made the expensive restaurant feel less intimidating. She belonged here, clearly, but she wore that belonging lightly. She didn't perform her status the way the other diners didn't need to announce her importance with loud laughter or ostentatious jewelry. The dessert arrived. Lily tapped the sugar crust with her spoon, delighted when it cracked. She took a careful bite, her eyes widening. "It's so good," she whispered. "I'm glad you like it." Grace watched her with a smile that held something deeper than simple pleasure, something that looked almost like wistfulness. Around them, the restaurant continued its quiet symphony of wealth and comfort. But at their table, something else was happening, a connection forming, fragile and unexpected, between three people who had entered the evening as strangers. When the meal was finished, Ethan reached for his wallet. His heart hammered in his chest. He had the money, barely. But it would mean no groceries next week. He could make it work. He always made it work. Grace held up a hand. "Please. This is my invitation. It would be rude to invite someone to dinner and then ask them to pay. I can't let you do that." "Why not?" "Because I have pride. Because I don't take charity. Because accepting this means admitting I couldn't afford it on my own." The reasons crowded his throat, but he couldn't voice any of them without sounding ungrateful. "I insist," Grace said gently. "Consider it my Christmas gift to Lily. She deserves a special evening." That was the argument that won, not for himself, but for his daughter. Ethan nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said again. The words still felt inadequate. They rose to leave. As they walked toward the exit, Ethan was aware of the eyes following them, the whispers that started as soon as they passed. The restaurant patrons were trying to make sense of what they had witnessed. The woman who clearly belonged, dining with a man and child who clearly didn't. At the door, Grace paused. She pulled out a business card, pressed it into Ethan's hand. "If you ever need anything," she said, "a reference, some help finding better work, anything at all, please call." Ethan looked down at the card. It was simple, elegant, Grace Whitmore, and beneath the name, in smaller text, Chief Executive Officer, Whitmore Group. His head snapped up. Grace was already walking back into the restaurant, her movements unhurried, graceful. She didn't look back. The business card felt like it was burning in his hand. CEO, Whitmore Group. He knew the name. Everyone in the city knew the name. It was one of the largest corporations in the region, with holdings in real estate, technology, manufacturing. The woman who had bought them dinner, who had sat and listened to his story, who had made his daughter laugh, wasn't just wealthy. She was one of the wealthiest people in the state. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, covering the city in white. Lily held his hand, practically bouncing with excitement. "Daddy, did you see? Did you see how nice she was?" "I saw, sweetheart. Can we see her again?" Ethan looked down at the card again. Grace Whitmore, CEO. The gulf between their worlds felt wider than ever. "I don't know, Lily." But as they walked toward the bus stop, he slipped the card carefully into his wallet. Just in case. The next morning, Ethan woke to his phone ringing. An unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello? Mr. Walker, this is Amanda Moore. I'm an assistant at Whitmore Group. Miss Whitmore asked me to contact you regarding a position that might be of interest." Ethan sat up, suddenly fully awake. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. Miss Whitmore mentioned you have a background in engineering. We have an opening in our technical division. She thought you might be qualified. Would you be available for an interview tomorrow morning?" His mind raced. "This is very generous, but I'm not looking for charity." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Walker, I can assure you that Miss Whitmore doesn't make hiring recommendations based on charity. She's one of the most demanding executives I've ever worked with. If she thinks you're qualified, It's because she believes you can do the work. The interview is real. The position is real. What you do with that opportunity is up to you." Ethan closed his eyes. Pride warred with practicality. He thought of Lily, of the scholars he couldn't afford to send, of the apartment that was too small and too cold and all they could manage. What time? 9 o'clock. I'll text you the address. Thank you. Oh, and Mr. Walker? Miss Whitmore also wanted me to tell you something. She said you'd understand. She said to tell you that 6 years ago, her car broke down on the highway during a rainstorm. A man in a work uniform stopped to help. He refused payment. Told her to pay it forward instead. She's been trying to do that ever since. The memory hit him like a physical thing. 6 years ago. He had still been working as an engineer then, still had his wife, still had a different life. He had been driving home from a late shift when he saw the car on the shoulder, hazards blinking, a woman standing in the rain, phone pressed to her ear. He had pulled over without thinking, had assessed the problem, had gotten her car running again. She had tried to give him money. He had refused. Had told her that someday, if she saw someone who needed help, to help them instead. He had forgotten about it. One moment of kindness among thousands, barely worth remembering. But she had remembered. The interview led to a job offer. The job offer led to steady work, to health insurance, to a salary that meant Lily could have new shoes when she needed them, could join the school band, could dream of college without that dream being impossible. It led to an apartment with heat that worked, with windows that didn't leak, with a second bedroom so Lily didn't have to sleep on the couch anymore. But more than that, it led to friendship. Grace would stop by sometimes, always with some excuse. She wanted to discuss a project. She needed a second opinion on a design. She was in the neighborhood, always something professional, something that didn't feel like charity. And then, slowly, the excuses became less necessary. She would come for dinner, sitting at their small kitchen table, eating the simple meals Ethan cooked, laughing at Lily's jokes. She taught Lily piano, claiming she needed the practice herself. She helped with homework, saying she was rusty on her math and wanted to stay sharp. Lily adored her. "Is Miss Grace your girlfriend?" she asked one evening after Grace had left. Ethan, washing dishes, paused. "No, sweetheart. She's our friend. But you like her." "Of course I like her. She's a good person." "No, Daddy. You like her like how you liked Mommy." He turned to look at his daughter. 7 years old, going on 30. Too wise, too perceptive. "It's complicated, Lily. Because she's rich? Because we're from different worlds." Lily frowned, thinking hard. "But she comes to our world all the time." Out of the mouths of children, Ethan thought. Simple wisdom, cutting through all his careful rationalizations. The next time Grace invited them to dinner, he accepted. Not at a restaurant this time, but at her home. It was as grand as he had imagined. A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. But she had set the table in the kitchen, not the formal dining room. Had cooked the meal herself, something simple that she admitted she had learned from a YouTube video and wasn't sure had turned out right. It was perfect. After dinner, while Lily watched a movie in the living room, Ethan and Grace stood by the window, looking out at the lights of the city. Snow was falling again, just like it had been that first night. "Why did you remember?" Ethan asked quietly. "That night, on the highway. It was nothing, just a few minutes of help." "It wasn't nothing to me," Grace said. "I had been driving home from my father's funeral. I was exhausted, emotionally destroyed, and then the car died. I thought it was a sign that everything was falling apart. And then this man appeared. This stranger who fixed my car and refused payment and told me the only thing that mattered was passing kindness forward. It was the first moment of light in what had been the darkest week of my life. I didn't know. How could you? But I never forgot. And when I saw you in that restaurant, when I heard that manager dismiss you, I knew. I knew you were the same person. Not just physically, though I recognized you, but the same kind of person. The kind who helps without expecting anything in return. The kind who sacrifices for the people they love. The kind who maintains dignity even when the world tries to strip it away. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. I thought you were just being kind. Paying it forward, like I asked. I was. But I was also being selfish. Because I've dated 100 men who wanted my money, my connections, my status. Men who saw me as a prize to be won, a stepping stone to something better, and I was tired of it. So tired. And then I saw you, and you didn't even know who I was, and you still maintained your pride, your boundaries. You weren't impressed by the restaurant, or the money, or any of it. You just wanted to give your daughter a nice Christmas dinner. And I thought, that's someone real. That's someone worth knowing. I'm not special, Ethan said softly. You're wrong about that. Grace turned to face him. You're the most special person I've met in years. You're kind without keeping score. You're strong without being hard. You're humble without being weak. Do you have any idea how rare that is? He wanted to argue, to deflect, but the look in her eyes stopped him. There was no pity there, no charity, just honest affection earned slowly over months of dinners and conversations and shared moments. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Your world, my world. They don't usually overlap. Then we'll make a new world, Grace said simply. One where it doesn't matter who makes more money or who has the bigger apartment. One where the only thing that matters is how we treat each other. In the living room, Lily laughed at something on the television. The sound carried through the apartment, warm and perfect. She loves you, Ethan said. Lily. She talks about you all the time. I love her too. She's an extraordinary kid. You've done an amazing job raising her. I'm terrified every day that I'm failing her. That's how I know you're not. Bad parents, don't worry about being bad parents. He smiled, despite himself. Is that some kind of corporate wisdom? No, that's something my mother told me a long time ago. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall over the city. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang, marking the hour. 9 o'clock. In 3 months, it would be Christmas Eve again. The anniversary of the night, everything changed. What are you thinking? Grace asked. That I was ready to leave that restaurant. That I had accepted that we didn't belong there. That Lily would just have to understand that some places weren't for people like us. And then you spoke up. One moment, one decision, and everything changed. I'm glad I did. So am I. He paused. I'm still figuring this out, whatever this is, but I want to try. If you're patient with me, Grace smiled. I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Patience is literally in my job description. He laughed, surprising himself. That's not quite how I've heard CEOs described. Well, I'm a very special CEO. She took his hand, her fingers warm against his. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. 1 year later, almost to the day, Ethan stood in the living room of their apartment. Not the old apartment, the one with the broken heater and the leaking windows. A new place, larger, in a better neighborhood. Not as grand as Grace's penthouse, but comfortable. A place where Lily had her own room, where there was space for her piano, where friends could visit without everyone feeling crowded. The Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with a mix of expensive ornaments Grace had insisted on buying and handmade ones Lily had created. Above the small fireplace, 3 stockings hung in a row, one for Lily, one for him, and one for Grace. Lily had insisted on the 3rd stocking. She's part of our family now, she had declared, and neither Ethan nor Grace had argued. Grace arrived carrying bags of groceries. She had taken to doing that lately, showing up with ingredients for dinner, insisting she wanted to cook. Ethan suspected she just liked being in their space, liked the simplicity of their life compared to the demands of her corporate world. "I brought salmon," she announced. "Remember? From that first dinner?" "I remember." Ethan took the bags, started unpacking them in the kitchen. "Lily's at a friend's house. She won't be back until 8, so we have time." Her corporate world. "I brought salmon," she announced. "Remember? From that first dinner?" "I remember." Ethan took the bags, started unpacking them in the kitchen. "Lily's at a friend's house. She won't be back until 8, so we have time." Grace moved closer, leaning against the counter. "There's something I wanted to ask you." He looked up from the groceries. There was something in her expression, nervous but determined. "What is it? Do you remember what I said to you that night? In the restaurant? You said a lot of things. The first thing. The thing that started all of this." He thought back. The restaurant. The golden light. The weight of shame and the shock of her voice cutting through it. "You asked if I'd have dinner with you. I asked if you'd date me." Grace corrected gently. "And you never answered. Not really. We had dinner, and we became friends, and then more than friends, but you never actually said yes to the original question." Ethan set down the bag he was holding. "Are you asking me again?" "Actually," Grace said, reaching into her pocket, "I'm asking something different this time." She pulled out a small box, opened it. Inside, a simple ring. Elegant, but not ostentatious. For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. "I know, it's unconventional. I know men are supposed to ask women, but I asked you out first, so I figured I'd stay consistent." She was talking faster now, nervous energy spilling over. "I love you. I love Lily. I love the life we've built together. I love that you still try to pay for dinner even though you know I can afford it. I love that you insist on buying Lily's birthday presents yourself. I love that you've never once asked me for money or connections or anything except my time and my attention. I love that you see me as Grace, not as the CEO, not as the fortune, just as me." "Grace," he said again, but this time he was smiling, his eyes wet. "Yes." "Yes?" "Yes. To dinner, to dating, to marriage, to all of it." She slipped the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. "I had to guess your size," she admitted. "I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks, trying to find the right moment. This is the right moment." They stood there in the small kitchen, holding each other, while outside the snow began to fall again. The same snow that had fallen a year ago, but everything else had changed. Everything was new. When Lily came home that evening, she took one look at them and squealed. "You knew?" Ethan stared at his daughter. "Miss Grace told me she was going to. I helped pick out the ring." Lily bounced with excitement. "Does this mean she's going to be my mom?" Grace knelt down, pulling Lily into a hug. "If that's okay with you, it's very okay with me." Lily's voice was muffled against Grace's shoulder. "I love you. I love you too, sweetheart." That night, they ate dinner together at the small table, the 3 of them. The salmon was perfect. The conversation was easy, comfortable, full of laughter and plans for the future. When the meal was done, they sat together on the couch, Lily between them, watching the Christmas tree lights blink in the darkness. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, his arm around Grace's shoulders. "For what?" "For not walking past. That night, in the restaurant. You could have looked away. Could have stayed in your separate world." Grace squeezed his hand. "I didn't do it for gratitude. I did it because it was right, and because some part of me recognized you, even before I consciously remembered who you were. Some part of me knew that you were someone worth knowing. Still, thank you. You're welcome. She leaned her head against his shoulder. But you should probably thank Lily. She's the one who looked at me and said I seemed nice. If she hadn't approved, I don't think you would have said yes. She's a good judge of character. Lily, drowsy and content, mumbled something unintelligible. Within minutes, she was asleep, her head resting on Ethan's lap. They sat like that for a long time, the three of them, while the snow fell outside and the Christmas lights blinked their patient rhythm. In the morning, there would be work and school and the ordinary demands of life. But tonight, there was only this moment of peace, of belonging, of family. Ethan thought about that night in the restaurant, about the manager's dismissal, about the weight of shame, about the moment he had almost walked away, about Grace's voice, cutting through all of it, offering something he hadn't even known he needed. Value, he thought, didn't come from the table you were allowed to sit at. It didn't come from the clothes you wore or the money in your bank account. It came from the heart you carried, from the choices you made, from the way you treated the people around you. He had tried to teach Lily that lesson her whole life. But it was Grace who had shown him that the world, sometimes, rewarded that kind of value. Not always, not reliably, but sometimes, when you least expected it, when you had almost given up hope. The Christmas tree lights blinked, the snow fell, and in that small apartment, with his daughter asleep beside him and the woman he loved leaning against his shoulder, Ethan Walker finally felt like he had come home. Not to a place, but to a moment. To a truth. To the understanding that sometimes the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or earned. They could only be recognized, accepted, and held close. And he intended to hold this close for the rest of his life. Outside, the city slept under its blanket of snow. Inside, a family rested together, the stockings hanging above them, 3 instead of 2. The third one, a symbol of the life they had built. One invitation, one dinner, one moment of courage at a time. Grace had asked him on that first night if he wanted to date her. He had never properly answered. But the answer had been forming, growing, becoming real over the past 12 months. The answer was in every shared meal, every conversation, every moment they had chosen to be together. The answer was in the ring on his finger, in the child sleeping peacefully between them, in the future stretching out ahead like a road they would walk together. The answer had always been yes,